Ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome to join this evening's Master Dialogue, Business for Good. May I introduce today's speakers, Ada Wong, who is the Executive Chair of Good Lab, and also Rachel Chen, who is the Chief Catalyst of InnoFocal. Okay, today's topic is Business for Good. So why this topic? Why this topic important to you? You may have three questions. One is, why business? Because you may ask, business for good should be the role of the government or NGO. Why business to take a role? Secondly, you may say business should be for profit or for the shareholder or for money. Why business has to do something for good? Third, so you may also say, okay, we are the business. We are already doing a lot of CSR and donation, charity. Why we need to do something more for the good of the society? So today we are very happy to have Ada and Rachel to share their research findings to you and share their views to you. Ada, over to you.
Thank you, Gilbert. Hello, everyone. Hello, Rachel.
Hello.
So this is the English session. We just had a Chinese session, so I have to switch my brain to speak English to you now. We are here to present to you the research findings of a paper called Business for Good, Understanding the Motivations for Business to Create Shared Value. Now, this is a research that has been collaborated by the Hong Kong Social Entrepreneurs Forum, together with InnoFocal, which is Rachel's company, and then EY, and also Social Innovation Exchange, which is a global platform to promote social innovation. We conducted this research over the last 15 months, and since mid of November, we have released our research report, and I think I'll ask colleagues to put the link to the uploaded research report in our chat box later on. So what I'm going to do is that in the next 20 to 30 minutes, Rachel and I will take turn to share with you, the why and the what and how of Business for Good. Okay, so let's start. So let's talk about the why first. Why were we motivated to do the research? Why Business for Good? We believe that business should change. Not because we want business to do more charitable things, but because we believe that Business for Good is a concept that will help businesses to respond to business challenges, in particular in the post-pandemic world, which is very volatile, very uncertain, complex and ambiguous, the VUCA world, as we all know. So what are these issues and challenges faced by our business community? Changing customer values, that's one of them. We can see that a lot of consumers are thinking about values behind certain products and certain services. Then there's always the pressure to increase productivity and then reduce costs. And also acute needs to identify new business and growth opportunities. There are very big and untapped markets in the silver hair, in the elderly fields, for example. And then internally, for a lot of companies, there's the talent war. We always want to retain talents. And we need to upskill the workforce, in particular in the post-pandemic world. And how do we do it? Then there's risk management, and an overall feeling is that there is declining trust in business. So these are some of the issues faced by our business community. And in order to tackle that, in order to search for new business opportunities, we believe that Business for Good is the strategy and the road to take. Now, globally, Business for Good has been around for a long time. From the Harvard schools creating shared value to, in recent years, there are benefit corporations and B Corp certification around the world. Interestingly, a lot of brands have become B Corps. For listed companies, whether in Hong Kong, worldwide, there are ESG requirements. So shareholders and investors are interested to know, what the company has done in addition to making profits, what have they done for society? What have they done environmentally? And how do they enhance transparency and governance? There is this big movement to discuss purposeful business and also business adoption of the UN SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, etc., etc. In the old days, it is pretty clear that companies exist to benefit their shareholders, to maximize profits for their shareholders. But now we can see that globally, people are talking beyond that. Shareholders are important, definitely, but there are the stakeholders, and those are the customers, the suppliers, the community at large, and everything else. And that's I want to highlight three big movements, and led by different platforms and organizations. The first one is the U.S. Business Roundtable Statement with 181 CEOs. This was a declaration done last year in 2019. In it, all these CEOs are committed to lead their companies for the benefit of all stakeholders, which include customers, employees, suppliers, communities, and shareholders. And shareholders come last. I'm not sure whether that's intentional or not. Now, the next one is British Academy. British Academy issued principles to put purpose at the heart of business, and that was also done last year. In January this year, the World Economic Forum issued a manifesto on stakeholder capitalism. Klaus Schwab, who is the convener and the chair and the founder of World Economic Forum, he wrote an article to say that in the fourth industrial revolution, companies should no longer externalize their cost and put very short-term gains to harm the future. So stakeholder capitalism should be the way to go for the future, and also for the fourth industrial revolution. What is the situation in Hong Kong? Through our research, we have interviewed a number of stakeholders. Rachel will talk about that a bit later. But our overall sentiment is that in Hong Kong, businesses understand the CSR, the traditional CSR, which is the giving back mentality to reputation management. And many companies are charitable. They always donate to, very good social causes. So doing social good is widely perceived as poverty alleviation. However, there is low awareness and limited adoption of the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and ESG is largely seen as a compliance. But recently, the stock exchange has enhanced the disclosure requirements, and that may provide a stronger impetus for companies to think a bit more to see, what they can do to make the society better, and at the same time, create a business opportunity to respond to it. In this, broad situation, we see a number of companies who are pioneers. They have already adopted the business for good agenda, but in general, there's a lack of coordinated efforts to drive this movement in the business community. What do we do in the research study? First of all, I forgot to thank the SIE Fund, the Social Innovation and Entrepreneurship Development Fund of the EFFOs, the Efficiency Office, under the Innovation and Technology Bureau. They are the funders of this very meaningful research study. In it, we have done 18 case studies, 9 local companies, and the rest are international cases, including 1 mainland China case, to understand the motivations behind business for good. We have done 25 stakeholders interviews. We have also done a quantitative survey with 1,000 young people, Gen Y and Gen Z. We want to understand key considerations in their consumption and employer choices. And obviously, at the end, we have 4 big recommendations of how to really facilitate business as a force of good in Hong Kong, and how we can co-create and build this movement together. So with that, I will pass to Rachel to talk about these stakeholders interviews, the survey, and also a bit from the case studies, the insights from the case studies, and also some of the recommendations. So Rachel, over to you.
Thank you, Ada. Hello, everyone. Let me cover, first of all, our stakeholder interviews. We talked to 25 representatives from organizations with different background, from government, NGO to businesses. And there are 3 major strands of insight, I would say. First of all, definitely there's a lack of a clear and precise definition of what creating social values really mean. But most of our respondents believe that there's a need to have a broader definition. Creating social good should not be just limited to a particular segment of the society. And from the business perspectives, we have a very clear insight that leadership plays a very important role in driving this business for good agenda. And there's a very close correlation between a company's ability to innovate using a design thinking mindset and whether it has a strategy to implement business for good. And overall, we advocate the need to shift from a do-good narrative to a real and urgent business case for companies to identify new needs in the society as a means to maintain their competitiveness, to keep their growth momentum. So there's a need to shift the narrative to from just doing good to doing good and doing well from a business perspective. And lastly, with regard to the government's role, a lot of our respondents believe that government can take a more proactive role in advocating, coordinating, and celebrating successes in business for good. And it needs to take a more holistic approach instead of relying on 1 or 2 government departments. Then, Ada, I'll move on to the slide on our survey with 1,000 Gen Y and Gen Z respondents. We asked about their considerations in their consumption choice and in their choice of employers. In terms of employer choice, it is very obvious that even with our Hong Kong youth, salary is no longer the single most important consideration, especially for Gen Z. They attach a lot of importance in having a meaningful job, in having learning and promotion opportunities, whether the employer has good corporate governance, and whether their values resonate with their values. And 2 interesting findings I would like to highlight. First, CSR does not really register a lot with our group of young people. Traditional CSR practices are not valued a lot by our young people. Secondly, advertising agency won't like this, but the reality is our young consumers, they actually don't pay really much attention to advertising in their consumption choices. Next slide. The third area of our research, we interviewed 18 companies in and outside Hong Kong, regionally and internationally, to understand why they have this business for good strategy. What is the benefit to them? And we derive insights on how companies in Hong Kong can start their own business for good journey. And we will cover these cases a little bit more later. So these are our 4 key recommendations. And Ada and I will go through these 4. So I'll start with the first one. Ada will start with the first one. Sorry. Ada, over to you. This is a list of summary, which will be, I guess, incorporated in our sharing with the case study. Let's move on to
there are too many words in this slide. So I'll move on to our first recommendation. And the first one is very obvious: linking business for good to the company's core business. Now, again, we would like to reiterate that, when we talk about creating shared value and business for good, we are not just, asking, companies to be more charitable. We do believe that by understanding the community, by understanding the social needs, and by identifying a business community from that social need, will come, new growth for companies. So linking business for good to the company's core business is the first recommendation. Perhaps I will highlight the Japanese holdings company of their 7-Eleven convenience stores. The company's name is called 7 & I. Now, what they did was that they see themselves as a social infrastructure as well as retail network. As we all know, these are small convenience stores. But for Japan, in their villages, in their small towns, there are a lot of elderly singletons. They live alone. If there are calamities like earthquakes and like floods, and it's very, very difficult for them to access food and household items. And so the convenience store became a mobile truck, as you can see from the photo. And these trucks could easily go to the different townships and villages, so that the old folks can just buy just right at their door. Now, this is a new business strategy of theirs, but it is also doing good to the community. They have collaborated with the local government, and this, they believe, is also a social service. But at the same time, this whole deed makes their shops more popular and easier to access and to visit. So this is a very simple idea, a new business growth idea that 7 & I Holdings in Japan has adopted. In mainland China, for example, in Ping An, as we all know, is a really big conglomerate, an insurance company. They have responded to China's poverty alleviation policies, and they have introduced a lot of financing to the villagers in rural villages, and alleviate rural poverty by empowering people with technology, and also have new rural investments to build strong and multilateral collaborations. The final one is Maple Leaf. Maple Leaf is a meat packaging company in Canada. Lately, they have turned to doing plant-based meat. Now, you will say, oh, but this is very funny. They are meat eaters, and suddenly they do an option for the future because they see this demand coming, in particular for the younger generation. So plant-based meat is now an option for them, and they have gone into this manufacturing quite early, so that they have adopted a market share in plant-based meat in Canada. So a few steps to kickstart the business for good journey. We believe it is important to establish a guiding framework to guide the innovation journey, and to have strategic foresight to identify and leverage the mega trends for the CSV innovation. As a lot of companies have CSR teams already, we believe that these CSR teams could be repurposed and redefined as internal change drivers, so that you have a team internally to identify the different social problems and see whether there are any new business ideas from it. And finally, we note that a lot of these innovative companies who are doing good have used this design thinking approach to respond to consumer and stakeholder needs. And this would be one way to go. Now, our second recommendation is on the employees. See employees as a key partner and resource for doing good. As we have seen, in many companies, there's a talent war out there, and many companies would like to retain talents. So how do you attract, engage, and increase the productivity of employees? And that, we can do by aligning employees with a common purpose. Nowadays, in particular, the younger and very talented employees, they want to find meaning in their jobs, and they want to really see a social purpose. They'll be very proud if their company has responded to a social problem and has diversified their businesses to respond to that need. And this is much more than sporadic volunteering, focusing on the social challenges that matter to the employees. And I would like to highlight a case that we've done, O Bank from Taiwan. O Bank used to be a traditional bank. Lately, it has become a virtual bank, and its target segment is young people. So what did they do? They asked their employees to come up with new ideas to have a bigger customer base, and also to make sure that employees are a big part of their business innovations. And so employees came up with ideas to say, to have philanthropic ideas that respond to the young people's aspirations. So for a lot of young people, they care about animals, animal welfare, animal protection. So the bank decides to do some philanthropy, and so for the account openers, for example, O Bank has promised to donate certain money to charities and NGOs who are really into animal welfare. So that's one. And another one is the Hong Kong Broadband, a Hong Kong company. It has established a talent network. It has asked employees to identify social issues they would like to get their hands on, and it has provided money and the resources to the employees so that they can really roll up their sleeves and go into the community and really try to do good. So what can companies do? As we have seen from our case studies, a lot of companies have established dedicated internal systems and structure to catalyze change. For example, like linking doing good and doing well with performance evaluations of employees, provide incentives to reward innovation, adapt company performance metrics to include social value, and to develop a culture of innovation and starting small and finding win-win opportunities where employees are at the heart of decision making. So I'll pass to Rachel to talk about recommendation 3 and 4.
Thank you, Ada. The third recommendation relates to how companies should understand and respond to the changing aspirations of our young stakeholders. How can companies really view young people as an asset to help them stay relevant and find new business opportunities? One very obvious example, we love to have more diversity in the composition of board memberships. Can we have more young people? Because young people are your employees, are your future and current customers. Why can't companies listen more to their voices and help steer the future directions of the business? And can companies be more genuine instead of doing some very superficial advertising or some very traditional CSR work like planting trees? We have seen in our cases that business can actually respond to the changing values of young stakeholders by doing more meaningful activities that can build their brand. Ada mentioned the example of O Bank, which is very, very obvious. How they actually do their business and do their marketing by understanding the changing values of young people in Taiwan. And in Hong Kong, we have the Laws Group. They genuinely want to help young creative entrepreneurs. And as a result, they started this D2 Place, which eventually become not just a do-good platform for these young creative entrepreneurs, but a new business avenue for the group. And also, more importantly, it also helped to revitalize the whole district in Lai Chi Kok. And now this kind of concept is also replicated in other districts, or actually in other parts of the world. So you can see how responding to the needs of a group of people can generate enormous rippling effect and create tremendous benefit to the business. And since young people are so important, we look up to the young business leaders, the second and the third generation in Hong Kong, to be the drivers and the coordinator of a new movement in our business community, generating a new mindset change with our business leaders. Everything starts with education. So we believe that there's a lot that we can still do better in terms of instilling global citizenship, values about sustainability with our students, starting from a very young age. We also see the need for our universities and our business schools to integrate this concept of do good and do well into each and every subject. It's not just about social entrepreneurship. We should not just talk about do good and do well in social entrepreneurship. It should be in each and every subject. The next one, the role of the government as an advocate, as a facilitator, convener, policymaker, and regulator. Since sustainability is so crucial to the future well-being and competitiveness of the Hong Kong society and economy, we recommend that the government should really take this to a next higher level, involving each and every policy bureau and department, and map out a manifesto and a blueprint, an action plan together with different stakeholders for the future of Hong Kong. We love to see how this could be possibly incorporated in future policy addresses. Ada mentioned the UN SDG goals. How can Hong Kong look into these goals and find goals that are relevant to us and help promote the integration of these objectives into business and into also policy making process of the government? And how the government and authorities like the stock exchange can take ESG as a, not just as a compliance, but as a driving force to enhance the competitiveness and sustainability of our big businesses. Next slide related to more public-private sector partnership. We really see the private sector, especially small, agile SMEs and startups, as the engine for pushing changes, as the driver of social innovation. We encourage the government to update their procurement rules and policy to encourage more collaboration with these smaller players instead of the large organizations with so-called proven track record, which is not conducive to innovation. We like to see government recognizing, endorsing companies that pursue business for good agenda. We would like to encourage consolidation and strengthening of the current award system under a big umbrella of Business for Good awards, with each and every organization awarding and recognizing different aspects of business for good practices. And there are areas which are not properly recognized at the moment and can be integrated in a new form of partnership of rewarding these companies. For example, a business model innovation, employee engagement. These are areas that are crucial in a business for good agenda. And obviously, media plays a very important role. How can the government work closely with the media? And it's not just the traditional print media, social media, digital engagement is also very important. The last slide. COVID has taught us a lot of things, maybe in a painful way. A lot of us realize now what actually are the very important fundamental human needs. What do we need actually is very different from the wants. And now, how can business respond to this shift of change in values and aspiration of us as consumers and customers? And how in this process can they create new business opportunities? The pandemic has also underlined the agility and the market knowledge of the private sector, the value of the civil society and NGO and each and every one of us in the community in mobilizing actions to tackle challenges in the society. How can we have a new model of public, private, and NGO partnership so that we can push innovation at a much greater speed, involving a lot more players, and very importantly, involving more efficient allocation of resources, avoiding duplication, and choosing players that could be more effective in the allocation of assets in addressing social issues. So that's our last word, and I'll pass it back to Ada.
Yes, thank you, Rachel. I would like to end our presentation by saying this. I think there's a traditional dichotomy of for-profit and non-profit companies. We all know that companies are for-profit. They are there to maximize profits for shareholders. And on the other hand, we have NGOs, the non-government organizations, who are charities, most of them, and they are there to do good. And I have business sector friends, and they say, well, look, Ada, I pay my taxes, and the taxes will go to these people who are in need. So that's the traditional thinking, and I think this traditional thinking is a little bit out of sync with the current very complex world. I believe that we have businesses which are social businesses, and we have also traditional businesses which are also doing good. We see big companies also identifying a new business opportunity by responding to an environmental and a social cause. On the other hand, we see the non-profits also learning how to do businesses by starting smaller social enterprises. So there is you and me and you, and this is a blended future that we're in. And in particular, in the post-pandemic world, I believe that there is a lot of room for the business sector, the NGOs, and the government to work together to find solutions to respond to, in particular, our social and our environmental problems. So that's it. That's our presentation, and we still have like 15 to 20 minutes for the Q&A. I hope that all of you could say something. It'll be easiest if you just press the raise hand button on Zoom, and then we can unmute your mic, and then we can talk together. Alternatively, you can type out your questions so that I can read it out, and for me and Rachel to talk about it. And I actually have, I can see a first question. I don't know who is it from. Can my colleagues also type up the name of the participant who has typed this? So Rachel, this is something for you. So I'll just read it out loud. Thank you, Ada and Rachel. Very inspiring sharing. Thank you for that. the audience went on to say, yes, business leaders and the government should champion the movement of business for good in the society. Apart from them, is there any role for ordinary people like us to play to promote the business for good imperative in the society, like as customers and employees? So, yeah, I think you are the best person, Rachel, to answer that.
Thank you. Yeah, I probably didn't highlight it in the presentation. One of the very interesting finding is when we asked the 1,000 young people who actually should be the driver of change if we want to advocate more business for good, the Gen Z said actually we ourselves should be the driver of change because they well realize that they are the consumers. They are the employees that companies are looking for. And if they can make their own decision, if they can sway their potential employers and the companies to integrate business for good, then actually each one of us have a vote in our hand. We can tell business what we want, what we care about, and collectively, we will be a very important voice in the society.
Any case you have in mind, Rachel, which has embraced this sort of value and listened to its customers and employees? Any company you can think of?
One of the things is, we would like to recommend that for companies, start with your employees. It's very difficult, ask you to, start asking your customer. So many of them out there, we don't know them. But as a first step, like one of our cases is an SME, Jensen Technology. They value a lot the views of their employees. And for all the major decisions, whether it's business or related to the culture of the organization or how they build their office, what kind of strategic CSR activities they should do, they actually ask their employees instead of the boss making a top-down decision, imposing the choice on their employees. And actually, it's a lot more effective because in the past, they used to ask the employees to participate in different kind of so-called CSR activities. And the response rate was not very good because these are not the things that their employees would like to do.
Yes, our research study actually focuses on the why. Why did we notice that some companies have pursued this pathway of business for good? And we noticed that the first major motivation is for doing good, is developing new business opportunities. That's quite obvious. Then the next one is leadership and personal aspirations, which are the drivers of motivation to do good. Now, I think I have talked about a number of cases showing that the leadership in the company is very important. But there are also cases whereby leaders listen to the employees and listen to the customers, so that they join hands and do good together. And I think this could be a very good trend. And not so difficult for all companies to follow. And I want to thank Per Dalberg, who asked that first question about, what could ordinary people like us do? How could we play a role? Now, while we are waiting for the second question, is anybody raising their hands? Not too many. I think, Rachel, perhaps we can also talk about the insights from some of the cases, because you were interviewing some of the local cases, and perhaps this is time for us to go deeper into the case of, for example, the CLP Power, the China Light and Power, the academy that they have created, and also Esquire Group. Perhaps these two are different models, which hopefully we can talk about and shed light on why they are motivated to do good. So maybe CLP first.
Power, the academy case is quite interesting because they are helping Hong Kong to train and upskill engineers and technicians. And they're not just doing it for themselves, because they believe that this talent pool is crucial to the future development of Hong Kong. And therefore, they are doing this together with other like-minded employers. They're working together with academic institutes as well. And this is a case actually showing that you don't need a lot of resources. They start very small, almost like a one-man band with someone driving it. And eventually, it starts to crystallize into some very concrete action and impact. And in the process, it attracts a lot of organization with a shared pain point and also a shared vision to work together. So it shows that doing business for good is not an expensive thing. You don't need a budget or a huge budget to do it. Another case, Ada mentioned the Esquire Group. Some people may know this. It's quite a sizable vertical integrated textile and garment business with a lot of presence in China and other parts of the world. They see employee development as a very important deliverable of their line managers. They have a requirement that they must give certain hours of training. They must be able to help their employees to upgrade themselves, see productivity grow, and as a result, they can only get bonus if their staff in their team can get a pay rise. So this is really not paying lip service. A lot of companies, I heard a lot of complaints saying that if you turn to the annual report, every company said we treat our employee as the most important asset. But honestly, how many companies are really doing it? But if you look at our cases, for those who are really seriously pursuing this important mission of treating employee as your most important asset, like Esquire, like Hong Kong Broadband, like Stan Group, it really pays off handsomely. So one of our recommendations is, if you want to start this agenda, this journey of business for good, start with your employees.
Yes, as you can read, you can read more about Esquire Group and also the China Light and Power Academy in our research report. They are really very progressive. I want to say the word progressive in their staff development, and they really want to build a resilient workforce based on shared values. Now we have somebody who would like to talk to us, Rachel. Per Dalberg. Can we unmute?
Yeah.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Good. Yeah, thank you. No, I just want to go back. I mean, you've repeated it several times now since I thought of the question, but I think really at the center of this is, of course, this shift, like you said, from the do good narrative to doing well and performing well, and seeing this as really a competitive tool or a set of competitive tools. And you talked about innovation, and I think you already now mentioned a few of these examples, but being involved myself in the B Corp movement here, we are looking at really trying to find these case studies and these good stories. So I've just glanced at your report so far because I just got access to it very recently, as late as today. So of course, 174 pages, haven't had time to read it yet. But I would just like to, on one hand, encourage you to maybe to collect these stories in a place continuously. Because this is something that other companies would like to see, because one of the aspects, say, for example, attracting talent and keeping talent is quite easy to understand. But how do you, for example, turn your organization by doing good into a more innovative organization? It's a little bit like, is that because you are already doing good, or is it as a result of? So the cause and effect, those stories would be quite good to retain somewhere and to retell, and of course also to be able to go back to these companies as a reference and have them maybe be references to that to these good stories. So that's just a recommendation and just echoing, I think, what you said. One question that I had though, with regards to governments, which is a stakeholder that obviously is very, very important. Out of curiosity, when you're looking at have you seen anywhere, not here in Hong Kong, but anywhere else, if you looked at it, any incentives when it comes to, say, tax breaks or anything, incentives from governments to incentivize better business models, just like we're now pumping money maybe into, you see in Europe, for example, airlines, but they have to, the money that they receive will be with a commitment to actually change, going from to use more reusable energy sources in the future, etc. Do you see any plans or actions like that anywhere? Tax breaks?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Dahlberg. I'll quickly acknowledge your comment and your question. Then I think Rachel can talk about some of the things that we have seen from our research that other governments worldwide, whether city governments or national governments, that they have done to encourage and incentivize business for good. For us, the HKSCF, the Social Entrepreneurship Forum, it's a small intermediary platform. We have done this research, which I think I would consider as a first phase research. We would love to continue to collect the stories of companies who are doing good, not just local companies. Hopefully we see more cases from mainland China, from Taiwan, and also from elsewhere in Asia. We believe that this is a trend, a very important trend for Asian companies as a whole, because it responds to sustainable development, and it could also help governments in this region to respond to different social issues. So it is our hope that we can keep on disseminating the findings and insights from the research. We have plans to talk to the business school students in Hong Kong. We also have plans to talk to more CEOs, to have a CEO roundtable when the COVID-19 situation is a little bit clearer. And we would love to join different platforms and forums to tell the stories, because we believe that people will need to hear the stories so that they will also join this movement, and together we can have a mindset change towards business for good. So I'll pass to Rachel to talk about perhaps some of the tax incentives or some of the procurement policies that we have seen worldwide.
Thanks, Pearl, for that question. We actually also posed this question to some of our stakeholders in the interview. And we particularly posed this question to people from the business community and asked them whether tax incentive would be an effective measure to encourage doing good and doing well. And actually, most of the respondents don't really see tax incentive as the most effective means. It might work in the short term, but this may not work in the long run or in a more strategic way, because in our last Cantonese session, Ellen actually highlighted the fact the most important thing actually is for business to see business for good as imperative to keep their competitiveness. And as far as the government is concerned, I personally always believe that one of the most important roles that the government can play is to create demand. And how can the government create demand through a more, I would say, liberal procurement policy? How can they allow more players in the community, in the business community, the smaller companies, the startup that may not have a track record, but have a very innovative solution that they want to try and pilot? How can the government facilitate this kind of experiment? I think this is important. And we also mentioned about, SDG, like in the case of the Singapore government, they very diligently every year review to what extent their committed SDG goals are fulfilled, and what else they can do more, and how these could be integrated into all their policy areas. We think actually this is something that we need, not just as a kind of nice to have item among, a laundry list of many things, but this should be an overarching policy, a strategy to tie everything that Hong Kong should do to keep us more competitive as an economy and to make our society more sustainable and make our people happier and healthier.
Right. Thank you, Rachel. I just want to check whether anybody has raised his or her hand to talk to us, or you have any other questions. I know that there's a lot to digest and to sink in. So please go to our link and download the report. It's not that long, and I hope it is quite readable. This is so this research study is just the beginning. At HKSEF, we will continue to promote this, and we hope sincerely that after hearing our presentation, you are interested and you are motivated to join hands with us so that we can build this local movement. In our last session, we did emphasize that we see a lot of other countries and other cities. They have business leaders coming together and signing manifestos and saying that this is it, this is the future. We want to stay competitive, but we also want to help the world to become more beautiful, happier, so that our workforce is more resilient. So perhaps we need that. We need this this platform for us to say that this is the way to go. And we hope that, together in 2021 and beyond, we can collaborate to make this work. Today's talk has been co-organized by the HKSEF, the Social Entrepreneurship Forum, and also the B Lab and Impact Partners. I just want to ask Gilbert, who is representing Impact Partners, to see whether you want to have a last word or to have concluding remarks so that we can close today's talk.
Okay,
Gilbert.
thank you, Ada, thank you, Rachel, for the very insightful sharing. So also thank you, ladies and gentlemen, your time for attending today's session. And we, Impact Partners, would like to continue our organizing this master dialogue with the master who can share very insightful information and perspective to us. Thank you very much. Goodbye. Have a nice day.